Well, hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about community. I always say that the Brian Webb Dance Company has to involve itself with 3 levels of community: local, because of course we live here in Edmonton and that's where we do the majority of our work. But at the same time, we're part of a regional community. I mean, we could say the region is Alberta, but we could also say it's the Prairie region. And as a matter of fact, with some of our colleagues, we have formed the Prairie Dance Circuit to encourage dance to travel around the 3 Prairie provinces. And then, of course, we're part of the national community. We're Canadian, and we're part of a national dance community. And then, it's a global world. We need to be very aware of the global dance community. And this is particularly true since one of Canada's greatest virtues, I feel, is that we are a pluralistic nation where people may move to Canada and celebrate their heritage in a very open and inclusive way. That's going to be our theme as we talk about dance in the community. I'm joined by 2 really great guests and workers in our local community, and that is Usha Gupta, whose dance company is Usha Dance Entourage. It's important to know that this year, Usha's dance company will be doing a tour of 8 Canadian cities. And last year, her company did a tour of 11 Indian cities, which was the largest tour by any Canadian dance company last year. And that's saying something about pluralism, about multiculturalism, and of course, about the dance that Usha takes part in here in Edmonton. And my other guest is Sereda, whom I've known for quite a few years. 25 years ago, I think, Les, I was given the opportunity to choreograph on Shumka Ukrainian dancers. And Les was one of the dancers in the piece. And now he's the artistic director of Shumka. Shumka, I would say, Les, is an iconic company in Edmonton. It's one of the key arts organizations that this community is known for. And I'm interested in how that came to be and what it really means. As a Canadian of Ukrainian heritage, there's a difference between Usha and Les. Usha was born in India, and she is a first-generation then immigrant to Canada who formed a dance company, I believe, around 1995.
89.
89, okay, so a little earlier. I remember the first time I presented your work was in 1997. Yes. Les is Canadian born. He's Canadian of Ukrainian heritage. And so how they make their dances, I would think, is probably very different. So welcome to you both.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Usha, as we're talking about community, how do you see yourself in the Edmonton arts community, in the Edmonton dance community?
First of all, namaskar. I came in 1989 And that time I started meeting a lot of people, and they were really crazy, and they were so keen that I should teach them. But I was noticing that they were not knowing very much about the background of Indian dance and music. And I realized that I should give them as much as I have with me, which I brought from my gurus. I should share that, because I started noticing the people are really very keen, their students should learn, and the community was coming nearer to me, and they were saying that, oh, Canada Day is coming, oh, the Heritage Days are coming, and Klondike Days are coming, and those were new things to me. And when I was indulging with them, I realized that I must give them something which they are craving for.
So, Usha, would you say it was really about introducing people to the dances of their heritage?
Yes.
And then when that happens, is there something that also occurs in regard to preserving culture?
All the time the parents were saying when they are bringing their children, we want to preserve our heritage. If nothing will be there, Usha ji, they will forget. They'll forget how to chant, how to dance, how to do Lord Krishna's movements, Lord Rama's movements. They will forget Mahabharata, they will forget Ramayana. But if you are teaching them and telling them the stories, then they will come to know, because they are in this part of the country, which is such a beautiful, most wonderful multicultural country, this Canada, I will say so. But we want our heritage to be preserved. How? Through culture and art. So that's what I was given the ideas from them, that I should teach them the pure classical dances, telling the stories, because classical dances of India are all about stories, about God and goddesses. So they were kind of very, very happy to do that.
I would think so, but Les, I would think that your experience is very different as a Canadian-born dance artist.
Very much. I'm already third generation Canadian. So my great-grandfather came here in 1896. So I have a very different journey along those lines. And of course, very proud of my cultural roots, but very much a Canadian. I was lucky in 1992 to go to Ukraine for the first time to study. And I thought I was going home. I thought I was going to go back to the homeland. And I don't think I was there 15 minutes and I went, holy cow, I'm Canadian. And obviously, our sense of community here is a huge influence on the work that I'm creating. We're a Canadian dance company who's trying to maintain Ukrainian traditions. And Shumka is very much a Canadian company. And we're telling Canadian stories as much as we're telling Ukrainian stories. And we're influenced by this pluralistic society that we live in. We're influenced by Usha and her work. We're influenced by our Indigenous partners. All of this comes together and I think plays a role in the stories and the journey that we're trying to take through our choreographies.
I always feel that dancing is so important. I mean, it's my life, it's your life, and it's your life, Les. We all three of us really believe in the act of dancing. Hence, the title of these programs, Without the Dancing, There Ain't No Dance. I know that when I experience a dance concert by Shumka, of course, along with everyone else there, I'm waiting for the whole pack. And I always say, I defy anyone to stay in their seat when that whole pack of Ukrainians starts dancing a hopak. It celebrates the fact that we are here now, because dancing is always about the here and now.
Gordon Gourdet, one of our previous artistic directors, he came up with a wonderful quote about hopak, that it's a celebration of life. It's the celebration of of all these wonderful things, the pride of our culture, you know, the love between people, and things that we want to share with our audience. So I love that quote, that it's this celebration of life that we are sharing with all your audience. And you know, the other thing, I mean, we've talked about in the past, Brian, with Hopak is you know, 50% of what you see is what you hear with Shumka. You know, we're blessed with this music that is so inspiring. And you could just put that music on and people are clapping without even the dance on stage. You know, there's something infectious with the music that drives people. So, I mean, that's a wonderful blessing that I think that we have with
Well, it's
Hopak.
always about rhythm.
Yes, very
Right?
much,
And
very
we
much.
say that if you feel the beat of your heart, which every living human being does, that every human being knows dance inside their body. I want to skip forward, Usha, to today, because one of the things that was most interesting about your most recent tour of India, the reviews were spectacularly good. And every review talked about how fresh the choreography was. What do you think that means? What was fresh?
So the thing is that when I came here, I started taking the good things from here, you know, in different dances. I was very lucky. I became a member of Alberta Dance Alliance, and they were introducing me all the different cultures here, different nationalities. So what I was doing, I was taking things, oh, this is so beautiful, this Scottish so beautiful, or this is Ukrainian is so beautiful. So I was taking bits and pieces from there and keeping in my mind, what a beautiful country I have come to expand, you know. But at the same time, when I did my first show, one very impressive, I will say, and very, the one who understood me, I don't know how, that man came into my journey, and his name is Brian Webb. So when he contacted me in 1996, and he came to know about me, and he said, Usha, well, I would like to take your show, but first you people do a workshop. So I did a workshop. The name of the first show, 5 Senses, 5 Seasons. And I was really very proud for this thing, that I took all 5 dancers, Canadian, from Edmonton, highly qualified, well-known, and 5 musicians, all were Canadian. I was the only person Indian. And we did that show in 97. And Brian didn't say anything to me, how should I choreograph, what should I do. But those days, chanting was very popular in Canada. Chanting and yoga were very popular. And behold, that show, Brian took it, and I don't know from where I started taking that show, and it came maybe a little bit contemporary in that, which I was not knowing very much, but I took in that to work with me a modern dancer, first Linda Adam, and then I took Tamara Bliss. So I was telling them that I want to do this dance for today. I'm teaching Kathak and Bharatanatyam, but I want some movements like that, you know. And that's what I think Brian liked it, and he presented my show, and from that very time till today, he's presenting me. He has presented me my 6 big productions, and the last show which I took to India, that's what people are saying, and Brian is saying that one of the top show. Why? I didn't forget my roots, Brian. I didn't forget my Kathak. Kathak is there, but in a different way. So that is what people liked in India also. People took that Kathak is there. Kathak hasn't changed at all.
You've brought up several points here that I think are really important. One of them is building relationships. Obviously, you and I have become good friends, but as well we're colleagues, so that on your show that recently toured, Coj, I was the dramaturge. And that's a particular relationship between the creator of the show and the person who has a dialogue, a conversation with that curator. This is what I saw. Is this what you mean? Those conversations we had were very important. But they didn't just happen. You and I had built a relationship over years. In our relationship, one of the most important things I feel that I have said to you was to stop hiring people, dancers, from the mainstream community and hire dancers, including your students, who are now at a professional level. I think your dances should be danced by dancers who are of Indian heritage. What do you feel about a comment like that?
This was a wonderful thing happened. And thank you very much, Brian, that idea when you gave me. When I came home, I was jumping around and I was so proud. And I took my best two students that time. One is Marla Palkamalil. She learned almost 24 years from me. And then my other student, she's almost 24 now. She's my granddaughter also, Riya Alika Mittal. She also has become a professional dancer. And she also does both the style, and she does even third style also. She learns contemporary in University of Alberta. And other three dancers from India, but they are South Asian.
And so the evolution then, Les, of Shumka, I mean, we're talking generations now.
That's right.
Of Shumka dancers. Shumka is almost part, one could say, of the arts establishment in Edmonton. I mean, it's got a massive school. I believe there are like 22 couples in the ensemble. There's a lot of spectacle going on. There is a lot of dancing going on. And so the context of how you work today has to be somewhat different than Usha's.
I think so. You know, Shumka just celebrated our 60th anniversary, you know, and it's...
Can you imagine, Usha? That company, 60 years old. It's amazing.
Shumka began as kind of non-denominational, that you could come, didn't matter where you went to church or which family you belonged to, come and dance here. And we've grown now, and there's lots of dancers in our school. We have a school of almost 300 kids. In the company, you don't need to be Ukrainian. We've continued to try and take those kernels of what is Ukrainian dance and find new ways to do that. You know, much as you incorporated these other elements, you know, we've tried to do that over the years. And sometimes it's worked really well and sometimes it hasn't, but it's been an ongoing, you know, journey to find out what works and what our audience is like. You know, we are also a company that relies on ticket sales to survive. So that's got to be a reflection and looked upon about, well, what does our audience want to see too?
I mean, this brings up a really problematic word, I feel, in art, and that is the word authentic. I think it creates huge problems. What is tradition? When we know even how people dance today is not how people danced 20 years ago. Or we can talk about the influence of hip hop and breaking, that is breakdancing, on contemporary dance today. I remember bringing it to the Canada Dance Festival at the National Arts Centre, and people were furious that I was bringing this fad. But it's not a fad. It's a movement that's all over the world, including India. You see street dancers everywhere. So the migration of people around the world cannot help but have influence on each other. That's simply the way it is. When you asked me to be the dramaturge on this work that you were creating, your last dance, Coach, I know we had many discussions, even some arguments.
Yes.
As to how is this dance going to reflect life today in Canada? Even though you are a classical Kathak creator. I mean, we're talking about classicism.
Yes, absolutely.
But it was obvious, not only from the press that was received in India, talking about the freshness of the choreography, but we would be in performance situations where there almost a festival-like atmosphere, and there would be other Kathak performances. It was pretty obvious that Koj looked different. That says something about the dance that you are creating here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
You know, Canada actually inspires me. And you inspired me a lot. I will accept it, and I'll definitely say this. Now, Khoj was there, and I was thinking, you know, I'm a vocalist also, I'm a musician. So in Rag Bihag, there is a Tumri, na manu re, na manu re, na manu re. So that I was doing, singing myself, and it came into my mind, and I loved this song. And I said, why can't I create this Tumri this time? So I was singing, and I told my composer, Parveen D. Rao, that Parveen ji, I would like to have this Tumri. He said, okay, Usha ji. I said, I want in Rag Bihag. He said, I'll mix a little bit. I said, okay. So he composed that Tumri, and when Brian came, and he was coming for rehearsal when we were doing the show here, one day he said, well, Usha, this Tumri, who's going to do? I said, all these three girls will do. One like that, and one paragraph, and we are showing a different Naika. Different Naika means different type of heroines, like a Shingaras, romantic, unconditional, or a hatred, like the one she is Khandita, the one she doesn't like the husband should go somewhere else, you know. He thought, Brian said, that's not enough, Usha. Something, story should be there. And he actually put me into thinking. Every night I was not sleeping, that he'll ask me some other questions tomorrow. Actually, I felt that why did I take Brian? I would have done that. But he was, every time he was with different questions. And so, you know, it's so beautiful, Les, that he brought that Tumri into such a beautiful manner. He was telling me, Usha, this is what I'm thinking, you can think. He brought me on the stage. People in India, when they saw that Tumri always used to happen with one lady, how come that three girls are doing this Tumri? And then she's relating, the artistic director, choreographer is relating into that Tumri. What is this?
Usha, that even brought that part of Koj back to its roots, and that is improvisation.
Absolutely improvisation.
Because all of a sudden the audience in India was seeing performers improvising. In classical dance, no. But they loved it. Why? Because it's alive.
You know, the spice was there. People were saying, Kathak is there, full Kathak. When Tarana was doing full Kathak. Tumri is there, the same movement, the same ghungat movement, how the woman is looking, and he has gone somewhere. Everything was there, but in a total, the way it was put on to the stage, and it was then he told me that you have to take the sheet along with you to the that you are going to some, that was an absolutely new thing, Everything was new in a Thumri manner.
Let's go back a second to something you said at the beginning, Les, about social dancing and people dancing together. Because really, social dancing is another forum for improvisation, for playing, for playfulness in the dance. I remember talking to my mother, who grew up in the Lamont area, which is a strong Ukrainian community, so people were either from the Ukraine or they were from Scotland. My mother's family was from Scotland. And she said there was very little interaction between the communities, but a Ukrainian wedding or celebration would happen and people would start dancing. My mother told me about how competitive and beautiful the dancing was. The improvisatory, the playful nature of the dance is really only one step away. So do you guys ever think of going back to that? I'm talking about structure here because, again, you have this opera house-sized stage and space, which demands a lot of structure.
As soon as you put something on that stage, you've already changed it. You've broken the tradition. Social dance had no front, right? As soon as you open something up to an audience, now you've totally changed the dynamic of what you've created, right? You're doing it for a group of people out there and performing for them. We are actually working on a piece right now, and the loose name of it right now is Urban Hopak. And the idea of it is to be performed out in the community and trying to take away that front and to perform it at festivals and things where people can be brought in and to be part of it and create these moments that you're talking about, making it more social and more improvised.
I want to challenge you more or ask you to speak more about, you said, taking the dance back to the people. What does that really mean?
The Jubilee specifically, when you're on that type of a stage, you're very disconnected from your audience, right? As a performer out there, all you see is some lights, floating above you and blackness. You can hear an audience, but you don't see them. But to be able to look at your audience members in the eyes and connect with them on a different level is such a lovely thing, right? That sometimes I think we lose a little bit at the Jubilee. So to be able to take a piece back where we can interact with people one-on-one and engage them differently, I think will be a lovely experience for the company.
I really look forward to this. I love that concept. To me, it's really important. Even though I have to say sometimes I get very nervous by the word community, I feel that communities can become quite finite. And that if you aren't part of that community, if you're on the outside of that community, you will not be welcomed into it. So here are 2 points of view. That as a living artist, I live in a community, and the dancing that I do comes from that community, and I create art for that community. On the other hand, if I'm seen as an outsider and not welcomed into that community, it can become quite alienating. I even remember, Les, that dance that you performed in that I collaborated with John Picklick on, called Perun. Some of the community did not like that dance. And I remember in the creation of it, there was huge arguing too, because we knew in the dance there had to be a human sacrifice. We knew that in pagan times, in that part of the world, in the Ukraine, that there was human sacrifice. And I remember there was a feeling that, of course, we would sacrifice one of the young women. And Andriy Nahochersky came into the dialogue, who is a PhD in cultural studies, specifically Ukraine. And he goes, well, you know, what you're doing here is so incorrect, because who were sacrificed were young warriors. We are not sacrificing a man, was what came forward. But eventually, that is what happened in the dance, and it changed the dance. Not everybody was happy. That was very obvious. But at the same time, I think that dance had quite a bit of impact on Shumka. I mean, I know that it was televised across Canada 4 or 5 times.
That's right.
I mean, the whole country saw that dance from Edmonton, Alberta. What do you feel when I talk to you about those concepts of community?
That sense of collaboration within the community. You know, you two have this lovely relationship where, you know, Brian's challenged you along the way. And that's such an important part of the creative process. Sometimes, you know, and you talk about us getting into our silos, where we're creating in our own mind, or creating for only with people within our own cultural community. And I think that's, especially in Canada, you know, I think we need to think bigger than that. I think we need to create universal stories that appeal to a broader audience. And bringing in those other voices to challenge us along the way is so important. You know, in Shumka, we're creating hour-long or 2-hour-long pieces. Well, you can't do that as one person. You know, you need those other voices, those other creatives in the room to help you along the way. It's not easy some days. You know, it's not easy to have someone come in and say, you're thinking about this wrong. But it's vitally important, I think, to have those conversations.
You know, when you bring up the word collaboration as well, one of the things that really inspired me, Usha, being part of our collaboration on Coj, was as well your intense collaboration with your dancers.
Yeah.
Because the dancers are also creating
Also,
the work
it's
with
not
you.
that, I'm quite old now. I have seen myself that I'm not the same person that I used to be. So people should think that way. You can't do the things the way other people like it. We have to pull the things from our mind to choreograph what exactly I like. Now Brian says, Usha, I don't want any jewelry. But Indian dances always have so much jewelry, so much. He said, no, I don't want this thing, I don't want this thing. And I had to accept him. My dancers were, especially Marla, was saying all the time, Usha ji, it doesn't look nice, we are not wearing this thing. Oh, no bangle, no, we never, at least a bangle, and every time. I said, Marla, I'm not going to tell him, because if we say that, Usha, if you are taking my idea, then you take my idea, otherwise don't take that. So no girls, they wore any jewelry, you know less. So, but in India, people loved it. People loved it here. Now dupatta, I'm talking about this dupatta. Dupatta is a kind of, you know how you feel a little shy. A woman is all the time like this. In India, a woman is not like this all the time. But the days have gone. One of the choreographers, still she's there, Kumidni Lakhia. She doesn't want dupatta in the choreography at all. Not at all. The same high class choreographer of India, one of the top, you know. And I asked her one day, I said, Kundmi Behan, why don't you take dupatta? She said, I don't like, because that is hiding your whole feelings. Now another idea of her, she said, no, dancers shouldn't be very thin on the stage. Nobody can see that. Dancers should have a little bit weight, value, the volume. Can you imagine? Now, Then I was growing up, I never heard all these things. Only dancing in a small place, taking the chakkars on small place. Now we are using the whole stage. So to me, the community gave me full hand here in Edmonton also, in India also. Whatever I perform, my students perform, my professionals perform, they give me a nice respect, and they say that, Usha ji, we like the way you do it and all that. So I will say that when I realize that I have got, God has bestowed me with culture, talent and everything, and I got so many different things, different styles, different art and culture from different gurus, this is the time that I should give back to my community.
So Les, I'm interested in the fact that you mentioned that Shumka is 60 years old, and it's obvious that Shumka's place in the community is different than it was then, just as it's obvious that people dance differently today than they did 60 years ago. With both of you, it's obvious that training is really important in what you're doing. So in terms of community, where is Shumka today, would you say, and where's it going?
Where's it going? Whew, that's another big question, Brian. We've taken risks, right? We've challenged the norms. And you talked about Parun, Brian, and how, Parun we did almost 30 years ago. And Parun was probably ahead of its time in that moment, and yet it charted a path for Shumka for the next 30 years. Usha, you've taken risks and brought in other dancers and other forms and created things that yeah, at some point, when you're the first to try something, people might not like it the first time around, and yet when you look back over those years, you recognize we've influenced the community around us. Right, and I think Shumka has influenced the community, and the Ukrainian dance community here at home and abroad. I think we hold a place within it. And you look at what is happening in Ukraine. Often they are still living in this post-Virsky world, we call it, where Pavlo Virsky Dance Company in Ukraine is yes, the preeminent Ukrainian dance company in the world. They are a professional dance company in Kyiv, Ukraine. And they are technically just beautiful. But they're still doing mostly choreography that was choreographed 40, 50 years ago. They're maintaining these pieces. And here in Canada, we've taken that idea of that Virsky work and tried to do other things. We've created stories, of folk ballet pieces, long 1 hour, 2 hour story pieces. And no one in Ukraine is really doing that the same way within Ukrainian dance. And I think people look to Shumka to say, hey, what is Shumka doing? What are they trying to do? And I think Shumka holds a place in that community of trying to find a new path.
So you're talking about a global community too. I think
so.
You were talking to me the other day, Les, how you were involved in a global discussion on the Ukrainian diaspora. So dance from Canada, US, Australia, I believe, Ukraine. South America, and it's a dialogue.
Absolutely. And yeah, there was groups from all over the world involved in this conversation. We submitted videos of work that we're all doing. And yeah, I mean, it came back to a lot of the discussion that came back to Shumka was Shumka's not living in the post-Virsky world any longer. Shumka's created something new beyond that world. It's lovely to feel like you're, as an organization of 60 years, that we have some influence. And we've created some work that plays into that.
This is always so interesting. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of dance we do. We are all part of a lineage. And at the same time, we are interested in expressing our liveliness today. So I hope that in today's discussion, you, as the audience, the viewers, were able to just kind of relate to the fact that dancing is alive in the here and now, and that really it's all about the dancing. That's what's really important. Thank you. Thank you, Usha, and thank you, Les, for participating. I really appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thanks for having us, Brian.